got it. I got it. I think you have to do that first.
Park like a pro by not storing your vehicle on a city street for 48 hours or more. Salt Lake City has a 48-hour parking ordinance, which states that no vehicle, boat, trailer, motorhome, or any other item can be parked on any Salt Lake City street for longer than 48 hours. This ordinance aims to prevent the use of streets for storage and to promote the free-flowing movement of road users.
Oh, does it? Are they here now?
Not at the door yet. I saw someone pulling the tractor.
Worth your while. Take you to an ATM, 14 grand. I just walk through. No.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Everybody? No, 6:30. We forgot to do this. Steve goes first. We have a hat. Yep, right here. Yep. Who's picking?
Testing.
I'm gonna go. Oh, you can do it on, yeah, right. Hello. We on? We on? Everybody take a seat. And welcome. Before we begin, Patrick, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to the Other Side Academy. It is an honor to have everybody here. A couple of special thank yous. Solutions Utah, thank you. Park Lane, thank you all for being here. Those are just some of the guests. All the other guests, we want to thank you as well. Really, Lou, it is an honor to have you all here. Before we begin, a couple housekeeping announcements. There's a bio room through there. There is one through there. And I need to let everybody know where the exits are in case you can't see forward. The exit's there. There's also exits on both sides. And there's one back here just in case of an emergency. And Zoom, I want to welcome everybody on Zoom as well. And I want to welcome our current mayor, Erin Mendenhall. Welcome. Former Mayor Rocky Anderson. And candidate Michael Valentine. And before we begin, it's important to also know we want a completely unbiased, nonpartisan debate. We're going to have asked that there's no applause, there's no booing, and there's no heckling. And I promise you, if there is, we will ask you politely to leave. No booing, no applause, no heckling. Deal? We on the same page? Okay. I'd also like to introduce Rod Decker, former KUTV political commentator. Rod, how long has it been since you were? 2016. Well, it's wonderful to have you here, Rod. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. I think we'll have a good time. I want to assure you at the beginning that though Halloween is coming, none of the participants here, including especially the moderator, are wearing a mask. We've got, I'll introduce from the far side, in the hat, Michael Valentine, candidate for mayor. He's an activist and a business owner. Erin Mendenhall, the current mayor of Salt Lake City, former councilwoman running for her second term. Rocky Anderson, he was mayor of Salt Lake City from 2000 to 2008. In addition, he has spent much of his life as a political activist. He's an attorney by trade. Here are the rules. Each of them will get 2 minutes to start. We have a timer. Then we'll take questions from the audience. If the audience doesn't have questions, I'll ask some. Questions from the audience. Would the people with the mics raise their hands and step forward and let everybody see you? See them here? What's going to happen is this. Raise your hand and they come to you and hold the mic by your mouth so that you can be heard when you ask the question. Raise your hand before the last question's done, so that as soon as they're done talking, I can say question and you can ask it. That way we don't waste people's time. So keep an eye on these two. They'll look for you, and we'll have and we'll have questions from the audience. I won't time the answers to those questions. We'll try and give them the time they need, unless they filibuster or start bickering or whatever. Then we'll put a timer on them and we'll have a more formal debate if that happens. If they talk too long, I'll sort of go like that. Should stop. If you don't, I'll interrupt. Yeah, if you don't, I'll interrupt. Okay. We drew lots as to who'd do what, and if I remember correctly, the mayor goes first, Mr. Valentine goes second, and Rocky Anderson goes third on the opening statements. Mayor Valentine. Excuse me, Mayor Mendenhall. I apologize.
I thought you said this was an unbiased situation here, Rod. Hey, everybody, I'm Erin. When I came into office, I got to work right away creating more shelter options and investing massively in affordable housing creation. And I got really interested in creating a tiny home community. In 2021, I announced our intention as a city to partner up and build it and make it happen. And it wasn't more than a day or two before I was sitting down with TOSA leadership, and it was clear that our visions totally aligned. Housing with wraparound services that creates community and sustainable progress for its residents. And the TOSA team and my city team have been working hand in hand and at what is actually lightning speed for a project like this to make sure the village could be built quickly and safely. And I'm so happy that dirt is moving on that site now. But my opponent's going to tell you that it's not happening fast enough. And that kind of impatience is indicative of someone who cares more about taking credit than getting it right. You and I know, TOSA, I know you know, big challenges and tough challenges, big ideas, they take hard work and they take partnership. And there's not a single TOSA student who didn't say, I need partners to do this. And I'm not afraid to do that too. Thank you for partnering with me to get big things done. Thank you for your big, bold vision. You're an asset to this community, and you've made me a better mayor. Thank you for having me tonight. I can't wait to do this debate.
Michael Valentine, 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. So good to be here. I'm Michael Valentine. I like to joke that I'm the only candidate that hasn't been the mayor before. I'd like to thank Dave and the Other Side Academy for hosting us here. It was great to come in last week and speak with the leadership here. I'm the only one up here that's been personally homeless before. I'm also a business owner. I'm running to eradicate homeless entirely, get people off the streets. You know, the mayor likes to talk how much she cares about the homeless, but she can't even ban homeless abatements. During this election, she's fenced off public lands down by Rio Grande. They've been stepping up more homeless abatements. And for anyone that hasn't seen a homeless abatement, it's very horrifying. Basically, the police going out, they've been seen slashing tents, throwing people's belongings away. We don't care about the homeless until we ban homeless abatements. They're unjust, they're immoral, they're unconstitutional, and they violate homeless people's constitutional human rights to exist in public spaces. So I just, I can't take that seriously when she talks about caring about people on one hand, and then on the other hand, literally spending public money and police dollars to go out and harass people all the time, throwing belongings away. Homelessness is a huge issue here, but it's one we can solve and one we can end forever. There's so many good things going around the country right now. Houston in the last 10 years was able to house 25,000 people, bypassing the shelter model directly into housing. Denver is doing a lot of amazing things. Their new mayor, Mike Johnston, instantly declared a state of emergency, and they're working to house 1,000 people by the end of the year. So I want you guys to realize that we have an end goal in sight to get everyone off the streets and to make sure no one ends up homeless again. I'm running to make Salt Lake City one of the first major countries in America to completely eradicate homelessness and have housing as a human right. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
about what can be done. Sorry, now I was saying that those who are participating here at TOSA are setting such an incredible example as to how anybody can turn their lives around, conquer their demons, and look forward to a great, productive, law-abiding life of love and contribution to your community. I have to say that I'm amazed that our mayor, I expect that our elected officials are going to be straight with the people of the city. In April of 2021, the same mayor used the same phrase, we're working at light speed and we'll have homes ready for occupancy at the other side village by this winter. And maybe she just didn't know better, but we all had that expectation over a year ago. And now we've been through 2 vicious winters, going into a 3rd winter, not one occupied. A year ago, she promised that the city was going to put all this money out. And for instance, the old Ramada Inn with 200 units was going to be occupied by last April. Well, not only was it not occupied by then, they weren't keeping track of it. She thought it was still under construction. She said that on September 26th, and yet her office knew on at least September 20th, the deal was dead. That means over 400 people who are unsheltered in our community are out on the streets today, contrary to what we were all promised by this mayor. I look forward to a good, hearty debate, and I look forward to people being straight with this community once and for all.
Thank you. Okay, now, if you have a question, you raise your hand and they come. I'll start with the first question. Mayor Anderson, former Mayor Anderson, let me ask, you've talked about wiping out encampments. Talk about that briefly.
Yes, everybody is entitled. I mean, the members of the homeless population, those who are unsheltered, living in tents, under tarps, living in cars, the residents of our community who should be able to use our parks without any obstacles, without any threat to their safety, and the businesses in our community, many of whom are leaving or ready to leave Salt Lake City. This has been a lose, lose, lose situation during the last 4 years under this administration. I will make certain that we eliminate the encampments in our city. And the way we do that is provide a humane alternative place, a sanctioned campus. And I would hope that we could do it at some place like the old Wing Point Golf Course. Is my time up?
Oh, your time's up.
Okay. And provide them opportunities and amenities that will help them transition out of homelessness.
Mr. Valentine, you have said you will end abatements. I take it that's exactly the opposite of what he just said. He'll move them out, push them away. You say homeless is camped, they get to stay there until we have housing for them. Am I right?
No, that's incorrect. Rocky and I both support banning abatements. They're unconstitutional, they're unjust, they're crimes against humanity. I released a homeless plan in February, and it's very simple. I'd declare a state of emergency, set up sanctioned camping for everybody, not for 50 people as a political stunt right in the middle of an election, but everybody, because that's the point, is we need to get people off the streets into sanctioned areas to then get intake into long-term housing.
There's an encampment here on 6th South. If the police came along, would you tell the police not to go and tell those people they either move or they go to the camp or they can't stay here? If you're mayor, they get to stay there, right?
The camping laws are unconstitutional. Everyone has a First Amendment right to exist in public space.
Your mayor, do they get to stay there or don't they?
It's a bigger situation where when we say we're setting up sanctioned camping, we're moving people to sanctioned areas.
Okay, quick. It's the mayor's turn, but you get quick. If you're the mayor, they don't get to stay there. They're gone.
What you said earlier was incorrect, Rod. The whole idea is not to force people out once you've got this alternative place. The model really is, I think, Haven for Hope campus in San Antonio. They have a place, a sanctioned place, and they provide showers, they provide food, a mail drop, they have property lockers. there's such nice amenities, people want to go there rather than be in the encampments. So it's a matter of enticing them there and being humane toward them rather than this absolutely cruel inhumanity under this administration.
Has the floor.
Okay, let's get real. Abatements are required by the state of Utah to be conducted by public health departments, and cities are required by the state of Utah to support those abatements that that public health department does. So banning abatements is actually not the purview of any mayor in the state of Utah. The legislature could do that. Let's be real. Let's also be honest, because of the last 6 or 7 debates we've had, he has talked about allowing people to live in parks, allowing people to live in public spaces until there is housing available for everyone. So there's a bit of an inconsistency here. A really big challenge is when you name something like Wing Point Golf Course and Rocky says, we're going to move them out there. The FAA, who oversees that land that's owned by the airport, is not going to allow people to move out there because it's right under the noise and the pollution of jets. It would put people 1.3 miles closest distance to the nearest transit stop, a bus or the tracks line there at the entrance of the airport, 1.3 miles. Miles and miles from food, services, job centers. This is sweeping people under the rug. And it's dangerous because he's making promises that actually are completely unfeasible. 50 people in the temporary sanctioned community that we're making, the pods with the state of Utah, 50 people is because everywhere across this country where these communities happen, if you get more than 50 people, engagement declines, management becomes very difficult, and it can become dangerous situations. 50 people is the realistic number. We're not going to do this for a headline. We're going to do this for success.
Mayor, well, I understand that if you're reelected, encampments will go on rather the way they are now.
No, and that's not actually the way it's happening right now, because since 2019, we have never had as many shelter beds opening as we have right now. 600 winter overflow beds, 200 additional for Code Blue, plus the 50 from our temporary shelter community. So people are able to move into shelter like never before since the old road home.
You said Mr. Valentine has shifted his position. Would you tell us, have you said before, no abatements?
Yeah, so she's talking about the state of Utah, but these laws are unconstitutional. They violate human rights. If the state asks the city to enforce an unconstitutional, unethical law, I will absolutely not do that. These laws are being struck down across the country right now. In the district court in California, these anti-camping laws are being struck down. In Idaho, they're being struck down. What I said is people have a right to exist in a public space if they have nowhere else to go. My position is that I would declare the state of emergency on homelessness the very first day I take office and set up sanctioned camping areas so everyone can go to these areas to unify resource, to be intaked and be moved into long-term housing. I do not support spending money on the police going out, harassing homeless people, throwing their belongings away, ripping open tents, and doing all this stuff.
Anderson.
Yes, the mayor says, oh, the state requires us to do this. Nobody in the state requires, and I've been there at dozens of these. The police come in, they don't help anybody out. It's this hostile relationship all of a sudden. I asked police officer once, do you have any alternative place for them to go as you're pushing them out of this place? It's very traumatizing. It's horrible. I've seen people have breakdowns, and the police officer said, no, I don't. You're going to have to ask Mayor Mendenhall. Those were his exact words. A lot of them hate doing what they're doing, but they're told to go out. And in the process, the city will send out the streets division and their contractor, Advantage Services. And if somebody isn't with their property, and even sometimes when they are there with their property, including tents, sleeping bags, other survival gear, they come in and scoop it up. They destroy it. They send it out to the landfill. It is the most inhumane chapter in our city's history in terms of the treatment of those most in need.
You got an encampment here on 6th South. Supposing you go and you say, oh, we've got a deal for you outside of town, and they say, no, I'd rather stay here.
No, they don't have that choice.
Okay, what's going to happen if you say, no, I'd rather stay here?
If you provide an alternative place, a humane place, like what I've been advocating for, and the mayor has resisted for 4 years now.
Okay.
And now she's going to do this phony 50-pot deal with the state.
Get to the point of what if they say no.
That's the way to get rid of the encampment. You can't just have people violate the law and stay put. You can't do that. They're ruining neighborhoods. There are people, there are open air drug markets.
Stay here?
Pardon me?
If they say, I'd rather stay where I am.
They don't get to choose to do that.
Do the police say, you can't do that? You gotta go out to the encampment?
Absolutely.
Or you gotta leave town, or you can't stay here?
Yes, when you have a humane alternative for them, a place where they can go. But I'm telling you, almost all of these people, I've asked dozens and dozens of people in the homeless community, they want a sanctioned camp. They don't want to be out there in the parks and in our neighborhoods.
Mayor Mendenhall.
Kind of feels like we're debating you, Rod. Is anybody else feeling that? I know, I appreciate your passion for this. This is the biggest, most emotional issue that we are facing as Salt Lakers and across this nation. And it's right that, I mean, we could spend the entire 90 minutes talking about this subject, and I'm fine with that. But we have to be honest with each other. And the most honest thing you're hearing come out of my opponents is how they're going to fight. They'd be willing to break the law as it exists. And most of all, with Mr. Anderson, is that the city's going to go it alone. We're going to open it all up. We're going to use our money and our land. We're going to house everyone, and we're going to shelter everyone. And for someone who has fought the state at every turn, suing the state, throwing bombs at the state, fighting the legislature, to get the state off the hook by this guy saying, we got this, don't worry about it, state of Utah. Your 2-decade-long housing crisis that's been building across the state of Utah, the lack of even zoning in other cities, by and large, to allow for shelters or services to happen. Don't worry about it, everybody. Salt Lake City's going to do this by ourselves. And the most ironic part is that he could never get the funding through because a city council would not support this.
Here. I've got somebody back there. You got to have a mic before. Raise your hand and get the mic. I'll get back to you in a minute.
Hi, this question's. Hi.
The question from the audience.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Valentine. I appreciate and I respect your position on defending people's constitutional rights, and I understand that you are empathetic to people's situations. I like that about you. However, when it comes to the encampments, every single day when I pass by all these encampments at Liberty Park, under the freeway pass, I see shopping carts, I see obvious signs of property crime, commercial, residential crimes happening, drug abuse, people sticking needles in their arms. I think it's a pretty reasonable problem. How do you propose going about holding these people accountable with situations like this?
Yeah, thanks so much for your question. So I actually represent a very unique position up here. I've been homeless, but I'm also a business owner. My store is down at Rio Grande, right in Ground Zero, right where the road home was destroyed. I have homeless people come in my store every single day. I always hear about businesses having, difficult situations with the homeless. I've had zero problems because people come in and I treat them like human beings. I help them with food and water and get them the things they need. There's absolutely an issue with the city going on right now. It's not working. 160 people died in the streets last year. Like I said, the abatements have gotten worse during the election. I've had homeless people come in my store the last week telling me how bad they are right now because of her. So what we need to do is have win-win solutions for everybody. Sanctioned camping is a win for businesses. It's a win for the city because we're unifying resources. I think a big issue where me and Rocky differ is not having one location. I'd have multiple locations, but it unifies people, not just the homeless, but also community groups, Nomad Alliance, Coconut Hut, people like we are here.
Mendenhall gets this one next.
So we got to set up win-win solutions, and having sanctioned camping helps us close encampments, helps them keep them safe from drug dealers and people preying on them.
So if you commit a crime, you should be arrested, whether you're housed or unhoused. Your housing status should not matter if you're committing crimes, period. That's it.
Thank you. Go down and talk to Teresa Bowman down at well, she's now at Trolley Square in Mid-City Salon because she just closed down Mid-City Salon on 3rd South, just below Main Street, after being there some 30 years. And it was heartbreaking to her. And the reason she closed is because there were all sorts of things happening to her place and her employees and her clients. The last one was a guy came in front of the building and masturbated in front of a salon full of women. They called the police. Nobody showed up. This is the 3rd time they've had something like that happen. And the police tell her, as they've told a number of small business people that I've talked to around the city, that the mayor has instructed them with the homeless community, just tell them to move on, creating such an incredible sense of impunity that people think they can do whatever they want in violation of the law.
For tougher enforcement of the laws, especially on homeless people.
Not just especially on homeless, anybody that's engaged in an illegal and antisocial act, that we are going to enforce the laws. No, excuse me. Let me just, we've known each other a long, long time. So you bring people in, but if they have a drug problem, it's not that you get them into jail. There's a sister of somebody that's here tonight. I represented her family. She was taken in on drug charges, ended up in jail and dying, not because of her drug problem, because of an untreated medical problem they ignored. She should have been taken directly into medical treatment. I'm all for restorative justice, but that includes accountability for your illegal acts and then addressing it so that we can solve problems like mental health and drug treatment.
Mr. Valentine.
I just got a quick rebuttal. I feel like I'm debating 2 Republicans up here. Being in poverty is not a crime. Being homeless is not a crime. Enforcing anti-camping laws and criminalizing homelessness and criminalizing problem is 1000% the entire issue here. We can't just put homeless people in prisons, in jail. We can't put people that are struggling with drug addiction in jail. We need to have them be put into situations and be treated like a health issue and get people off the streets and not criminalize poverty. This is insane.
Mayor.
You might have whiplash, I kind of do, from Mr. Anderson's back and forth of the police are so hard, they're just out there brutalizing, they are too involved here, to the police do nothing, they turn a blind eye, and that they're working at the mayor's explicit direction to let crime happen. That couldn't be more untrue. I'll repeat myself. I don't care what your housing status is. If you are committing a crime, you should be arrested. And Salt Lake City Police Department is out there doing a great job. And they're working hard. And we have a system to work within it, which includes the county jail and zero mental and behavioral health dollars to any city, which is why we need the partners. So he talks about more detox beds and other alternatives for places for people to go. When we become an island again, when he is in leadership, those partners dissolve. The county, the state, other cities walk away because no one can work with that kind of leadership that gives you whiplash and talks out of both sides of their mouths.
Here, we've got a mic over there, do we? Oh, here, no, excuse me, the mic there, pardon me.
Okay, so it seems to me that ever since Rio Grande was shut down, it created a big, huge problem. These guys had nowhere to go. I'm not sure who decided that. You know, I don't know all your things, but I'm concerned about everywhere you turn and go. You can be on a beautiful block and then it's like huge amounts of homelessness, drugs, the whole thing that everyone's been talking about. And what about the hundreds of millions of dollars that has been designated for the homeless people, and yet we haven't seen anything? And then I just don't understand where this affordable housing is being put up.
I'll let them answer. I'll let them take a shot at that. Mayor, you go first.
Thanks. I'll try to, you asked a couple questions in there. So the closure of the road home was decided primarily under the Herbert administration with then Speaker Greg Hughes and County Mayor Ben McAdams. City Mayor Biskupski reluctantly came to the table for that. So that was a decision before my time as mayor. I was a city council person at the time. Absolutely, it left us in a lurch with at least 300 fewer beds when winter came and 0 people working to open any additional beds. So my very first job in January of 2020 was to get to work building the partners to open more shelter. We opened Sugar House DI, you might remember, about 2 weeks after I became the mayor. Next year, we opened the Airport Inn, which is now permanent supportive housing. The next year, we opened the Ramada Inn, and we've been partnering every single year since then. This affordable housing, I don't know what you mean about hundreds of millions from the city. The state, you're right. The state has put in $110 million in the last 18 months to the Olin Walker Trust Fund, $55 million in 2022, $50 million with another $5 million ongoing this year. That is exponentially more than they ever did before. They would put a couple 100,000 to about 3 million a year into Olin Walker, and now they're putting tens of millions. And that is because we are on the same page and we are working together. So the city's put in $56 million, and that has helped to create 4,000 new affordable units mixed across the city. And
Mr. Anderson's turn.
The current mayor was on the city council when they decided to spread these so-called resource centers, shelters that have totally undermined the neighborhoods where they are and around. And it wasn't 300, it was almost 400 fewer beds than what we had at the old road home shelter. And that was okay with them. They said there was going to be one around Sugar House, but those people had more political clout apparently than the other places where these shelters were going to be. And the current mayor, when she was on the council, voted for that, and there was no push to find a place for those 400 people who had been left out. Exactly like last winter, when every shelter was full virtually every night, and this mayor left hundreds of people out in the bitter, freezing cold. At least 12 of them dying of exposure. Several of them, and I've gotten to be good friends with 4 of them, lost fingers, toes, and 2 of them that I know lost the lower parts of both of their legs. 100% because this mayor did not do what was necessary to provide shelter for people left out in the cold. So when I say we were at our lowest moral point, there's Exhibit A.
Can I respond to this question too, Rod?
My question is for you, my first one. Okay, the gentleman in the hat, I can't remember your name. Valentine. Okay, you said that you can't arrest the people who are addicted to drugs. I beg to differ. Okay, and I want to know why you can't, because it saved my life. Okay, and then my other question is for all of you. What are you going to do with all these abandoned buildings that are not being used, that could be used appropriately?
Okay, let's the first question about drugs.
Yeah, so I think it's like everyone has different situations. Some people need tough love. Some people, it does help to have them go to jail to do something like that. My issue with this is about resources and money. The war on drugs has been an absolute failure in the last decades for a long time. It's been shown to be racist and systemically racist and all sorts of terrible things. What I am running on with homelessness and drugs and my entire platform is what's shown successfully around the world is when you take drugs from a criminal problem to a healthcare and a problem with health services and like that. It's been shown repeatedly to help people get off drugs better, to not cloud up our jails and do all these things. And secondly, real quick on the point about the vacant homes, I'm a real estate agent. I've been in real estate a long, long time. There's about 14 million vacant homes in America right now. Like if you gave everyone who's homeless a house, we'd still have like 12 million vacant homes. My plan for sanctioned camping is actually inside with the redevelopment agency. Real quick.
It's Mayor Mendenhall's turn.
If you're on drugs and you're not arrested and you end up getting offered detox or a treatment facility, it's your decision. You may not want to walk in there. There's a great likelihood you don't want to be there. And there's a really great likelihood you're going to walk out. Like that's the reality. So if you're committing a crime, you should be arrested for that crime. And jail, although not treatment for mental illness, for substance use, in this country, jail is the interrupter in many cases where people can sober up, they can connect with a case worker, they can get a peer support going, they can decide about options like TOSA, and they can make a decision in a better state of mind.
Mr.
And that's the reality of the function.
Our police, because of our mayor setting the standard and her police chief, are absolutely turning a blind eye to gross criminality in our community, whether it's dangerous drug use, whether it's trafficking, whether it's the cartels that are coming in. They are not making the arrests and putting people through the system. Now, I don't want to see people languishing in jail or prison. We had the most comprehensive restorative justice program in the country when I was mayor. And it's all about solving problems, not punishment, retribution, or humiliation. But you've got to get them in the system. My sister was a crack cocaine addict. It was unbelievable to all of us. 3 great kids, a family that was just torn apart at that. Thank goodness. And she would say, if she were with us today, she died of ALS a few years ago. If she were here, and I know her kids say it because I asked for their approval for me to be able to talk about it, we all agree it was the best thing in the world for her to be arrested in Utah County and be in the jail there and go before a judge and have to make the choice as to where her life was going to go. She got treatment and never took again.
One more point about drugs is it's always been unjust. You go back to the 80s in black neighborhoods, people getting arrested for crack when white people were doing cocaine on Wall Street. You know, and we talk about, she's saying everyone should get arrested for doing a crime. It's disproportionate because white collar crime, corruption, fraud, mayors that are doing backroom deals with corporations behind the public back, they never get held accountable.
I have a question from the audience. Yes.
All right, so you guys speak about issues on homelessness, and you guys speak about issues on war on drugs or whatever it is. And then also I heard the bridging of the gap between the public eye, the police eye, the government eye, or whatever that is. It seems to me that you guys all don't lack accountability when it comes to the issues that you guys proclaim that there are out there. I know that for me, being held accountable to my crimes and the things that I was doing to my community helped me best. My question is what are you guys gonna do to instill accountability within the justice system when it comes to the public, when the homelessness are committing crimes in the public, in out and using and staying there with nobody doing any just?
You want to talk to that first, Mayor?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Thanks. Great question. As I mentioned a minute ago, cities don't have any money for mental and behavioral health. The state has made laws that cities have to abide by, like abatements and many other things. We can't put rent control in place. We can't do inclusionary zoning. So we have to get creative about how we create deeply affordable housing. We have to have partners at all these levels of government because the systemic challenge, like JRI, for example, Justice Reform Initiative, it happened a few years ago at the state level. People are looking, the system, the group, state, county, service providers, city, police officers are saying, hey, we may need to re-examine this. There's some challenges with getting even people committing felonies to spend some time in the jail.
I'm gonna
So
call
you
a
have
time
to,
here.
you have to have partnership in order to get this done. And when you have a mayor who says, I alone or she alone could have done all of this, it's
call
not
time.
truthful.
Thank you.
I alone am going to respond to this. She turns every debate into bad-mouthing me. And you know what's interesting is she calls herself a clean air advocate. And the primary thing.
No, we'll get to clean air.
Well, no. I'm talking about what she just said. And I built great partnerships, but I did take the state on along with the Sierra Club. I imagine you wouldn't do that because it would involve a lawsuit. Well, the lawsuit came about because we had laws to protect the public health. We need the rule of law to apply, whether it's those who are polluting our environment or those who are undermining our community through drug use and drug trafficking.
No one answered her question, so I want to answer your question. It's important we hold people accountable. When I talk about criminalizing homelessness and just putting homeless people in jail, I'm really talking about crimes that aren't considered crimes. So like when we're looking at homeless encampments, there's also there's often a misconception that homeless people are out doing crimes, they're committing, being violent, but actually most of the time they're victims of crimes. They're being preyed upon by gangs and drug dealers and taken advantage of. So holding people accountable is important, but it's also important to not, criminalize people that are just out surviving, just trying to take care of
I'm
themselves.
gonna ask you a question just while you're there, if you can answer it briefly.
Sure.
You heard the mayor say he's gonna go to 6th South, and they're gonna say, you have to move. We've got a great camp for you. They say, I'd rather stay here. You can't do it. Does that count as an abatement?
Wait, sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question.
He goes up to a homeless camp, the cops do, and say, you can't stay here. And you can't, you have to move. Is that an abatement or not an abatement?
It's not the approach I would take. I think it's a
Okay,
little
now
rough.
wait, is it an abatement? You've called for the end of abatements.
If you're forcibly pushing people off public property, yes, that's an abatement.
Okay, so you and he disagree on abatement.
I think we disagree on the tactics. One real point about this, she talked about real fast. When she talked about the closing of the road home in 2019, I was out there. I literally drove around with my friends, picking up homeless people in my car, putting them in a warming trailer.
Okay,
Real
but
quick,
we don't
everyone
need
wanted
a
to come with
story.
us.
We need to know where you stand on abatements.
I'm telling people
Okay.
would come with, they're saying, hey, no one wants to go to the shelters. No one wants to come with us. People will come with us that are actually working with the homeless in the community every day.
All right, this is for Mr. Valentine. I was a resident of the streets of Salt Lake for 8.5 years, and I've seen a lot of people come and get their camps tore up. It was by choice because they wouldn't move. They were trespassing. They were destroying state property or county property. And for you to go and say that it's inhumane, how is it inhumane to allow people to live in the filth that the feces that they lived in, all the drug paraphernalia that was thrown and discarded along the side of the roads, and for having kids to come by the parks and see this, you know what I mean? Like I said, I was there for 8.5 years, and for you to say that the drugs are the problem, the drugs aren't the problem. The drugs are just a reasoning for our choices. We make bad choices.
I'm gonna let him answer. We've talked about this, so be quick.
So, my position isn't that I think homeless abatement should stay exactly the way they are. That's why I released a homeless plan. That's why I support sanctioned camping and moving people into these areas where there's washing machines, the beds, and people are being taken care of. My position is the First Amendment right. We have a freedom of right to speech. We have freedom to protest. We have a freedom to press. One of those freedoms is also to exist in public spaces. What I'm saying is these anti-camping laws are unconstitutional, and this being shown across the country. And real quick, historically, it's been shown forever too. If you go back to the 30s, during the Depression, they had Hoovervilles. People lived in Central Park for years.
Okay.
Well, they're unconstitutional if you don't have a reasonable alternative. And that's what I'm talking about. Create that reasonable alternative, which the mayor has refused to do for 4 years. She has basically guaranteed our community that we're going to have continued abatements through our parks, through our neighborhoods, and then they'll just keep moving them around so outrageously as they have been and continuing to steal their property.
And I'm gonna ask you a question along this line.
I'm going to answer this question first.
Okay.
Which is real numbers. 4,000 new affordable housing units since I became the mayor. A 413% increase in affordable housing investment since I became the mayor, more than every other mayor combined. A tiny home community with 60 houses and 400 when it's fully built. A temporary shelter community, a new kind of shelter the state's never seen, with pods that the state is going to be running and paying for after we launch the first 6 months of it. These are real alternatives. These are real units and real shelters that are opening. West Valley City hosting almost 200 beds when they wouldn't even come to the meeting 3 years ago. This is real results, no matter what he says.
Okay. Why hasn't there been a sanctioned camp in the 4 years you've been mayor? And do you plan to open one if you're reelected?
Very clear answer that often the Tribune cuts off half of the answer I gave since day one, which is that no city can go that alone. With $0 for mental behavioral health for services, we needed the state to take leadership on this. And this last legislative session, the state said, let's try it. And $1 million was given for a pilot program to try this out. $1 million. Salt Lake City said, we want to open faster. We wanted to be able to be open this winter. So we put $500,000 up front. We're putting our land up front, and the state's gonna contract with the service provider. That's the reason, because the state didn't step up until this last legislative session. It's on 500 West, 300 South, right across from the intermodal hub until April 30th. Then it will move on to state-owned land.
Does anybody have a calculator? How much is the city council, just because they're trying to make it look like they're all doing something about homelessness now, finally this winter, they just appropriated another $1 million, $1.5 million plus the state's $1 million. That comes out to $50,000 per person for these 50 pods. They could buy all of them hotel vouchers for over a year, instead of doing this political pretense of finally doing something. We need permanent supportive housing. And she talks about partnerships. When I was mayor, we were building permanent supportive housing like crazy. The city did the first one at Sunrise Metro, 100 units, then the county, then the philanthropy community, Jack Gallivan and the Eccles, the LDS Church, and we...
I'll take this question. I'm going to take a question, sir. I'll take this question. Then we've talked a lot about holding people accountable. So I prefer questions different from that. I'm sorry if I'm cutting anybody off. Question here.
So for Mr. Valentine, I just wanted to say it doesn't matter whether there was no choice to do some criminal activity. A crime's a crime either way, whether you have a place to go to or you're homeless. But I wanted to ask you about the encampments that you were talking about, because it doesn't, like, you want a spot for them to go, but it just sounds like we're just making more ghettos and hoods rather than doing really something, or doing really something about the issue.
Yeah. So real quick, just to clarify my entire position here, I'm saying that homelessness is not a crime. Being in poverty is not a crime. That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about dealing drugs or being violent or doing any of those things. I'm saying these anti-camping laws are unconstitutional. If there's a law, it used to be, years ago, it used to be illegal for a black man to marry a white woman, interracial marriage. That law was unethical. It was unjust. There's lots of laws that are on the books right now that are unjust, that are against people's constitutional rights. And to your second point, my point is not to just set up sanctioned camping and let that be. These are temporary spaces. So the point is to have unify resources, set up sanctioned camping, and move people into long-term housing. That's what Houston was shown to do. They housed, in the last 10 years, 25,000 people directly into housing this way.
Okay, the leading case in this country is the Ninth Circuit case of Martin versus Boise. And the challenge there was whether Boise could run people off from their encampments when they didn't have an alternative place. And the court said, no, you have to have a humane alternative place. That's what we need in order to clear out the encampments. I will do that immediately, and we'll do it with partners. I've never talked, the mayor mischaracterizes us all the time. I've never talked about us going alone, but I've talked about us having the kind of leadership we're seeing in cities with mayors all over the world. When they have this kind of a homelessness issue, it's for the mayor to come up and convene people, get the resources together, and put together a coherent, transparent plan and see that it's implemented.
I feel like we're repeating ourselves here a little bit. 4,000 new units of affordable housing, permanent supportive housing, the state stepping up in tens of millions of dollars more every single year than they ever did before, partnering with the county, the city, winter shelter plans, getting other cities to step up. Sandy City approving a medically vulnerable population transitional housing. Sandy City. That's what partnership looks like.
If you're mayor, will you break up encampments? Will you abate encampments, as he says? Will you make them move?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking
I
you.
am the mayor.
Mendenhall.
I don't have to tell you if, man.
Understand that, but I don't think, he says you're not doing it now. Will you be doing it if you're mayor again? Will you be doing it again?
We've been working to abate encampments with Salt Lake County Public Health Department for 4 years. That's what's happening. That's been going on.
Breaking up encampments for 4 years.
There have been times during the depths of winter when the county would decide we're going to pause, and it's the county's decision. They have the legal authority to do abatements. And the city's going to keep doing abatements with the county, and we're going to keep enforcing the laws, and we're going to come in before the county does with our rapid intervention team that we built, and they hit the streets last summer, and we're going to engage before the county makes a decision. Yes, we're out there. We're going to keep being out.
Have you been engaging before?
Yes, that's what the rapid intervention team does.
Quick.
Okay, she keeps mentioning 40,000 affordable units. Whenever a politician uses the word affordable, ask them at what level, because that's what's really relevant. They've been stuffing the developers' pockets full of millions of dollars to create what they call affordable, which is totally out of reach of probably every one of us in this room right now. These are not places that anybody that are on the streets are going to be able to find housing.
I got to rebut this. The housing authority for the federal government determines what is affordable. You should not have politicians deciding what is affordable. So he throws this out here like I've made up some level of affordability. Trust me, you do not want Mr. Anderson or Mr. Valentine or me deciding what affordable is.
Question here.
Mendenhall, I have a question for you. What is your thoughts on creating labor incentivized affordable housing where A, you would get a job, B, you would be able to afford housing, and B, you would be able to have public transportation more easily accessible to you?
I think that's what we're doing at the Other Side Village and the donut shop that has received funding now that's making donuts. Anytime we can connect somebody with a way to have income that is also supported by the community that they're living in, that's awesome. And we work with the education side of things, pathways with the state of Utah. We love that idea. I'd love to see more of it.
Anderson's turn.
Yeah, they've been funding projects like the Magnolia down here on 3rd East that's totally destroyed that neighborhood. New construction, over $265,000 per unit, moving people in. 2 of the units have been destroyed by tenants. There's prostitution going on. There's drug dealing going on. People in the condominium unit across the street don't even dare come out their front doors anymore. We have got to have accountability on the part of people. It's not compassionate not to require people to be accountable and be members of all of our communities.
I think it's absolutely insane. She's up here like being proud of doing sanction camping or doing homeless abatements like for 4 years straight, every single week. 160 people died last year from homelessness and poverty. Rocky's talking up here about people losing their limbs, people dying and freezing to death last year. A homeless abatement is when you go in, you destroy someone's camp and you leave them with nothing. Like go out and see an actual abatement and it's horrifying. One other quick point about these 4,000 units, just to show how off base this is. She's saying, oh, we have this AMI benchmark from HUD, from the federal government, but it just shows how out of touch you are because you don't have to actually set those benchmarks. Your RDA director has been in my comments the last couple of weeks harassing me on here, and just to show how out of touch you are, he was saying that you know, these 60 to 80% AMI units. Hold on, Rod. Hold on.
Quick.
These 60 to 80% AMI units. He said these are for service workers. $45,000 to $60,000 a year is not a service worker, and this is what you've mostly been building the last 4 years of your entire administration.
Question here.
My question is, well, and I'm surprised you don't know that it's the health department that does the abatements, but my question is, how are you all going to pay for all of this housing? We already have so much money coming out that we don't have enough for our parks. We don't have enough for roads. So much of it's come out of there. And especially when we have things like the Other Side Academy, they have accountability and that pay for themselves, that the people here work and they actually have a zero cost. And we have places like The Point that are only $44, 20 of which goes to services. But then we're putting all this money into facilities and shelters that don't do that. How are you going to explain to Salt Lake City residents if they're going to have an increased sales tax and other taxes?
Great question. The Point, for those of you who don't know, there are 2 of them now out on North Temple. They require full accountability. They have rules. They enforce the rules. They evict people. Imagine that if they're smoking meth in their room. They bring people in, they pay their rent, and they provide jobs. Yes, the way we're going now, the millions of dollars on these pointless abatements without an alternative place for people to go has cost more than what it would cost to provide simply a sanctioned camp like the courtyard at Haven for Hope in San Antonio. It's a temporary measure, and there you've got everybody together. You can do the case management and put individualized plans together to start transitioning people into jobs, into mental health, into drug treatment, and into housing.
Still didn't answer how you're going to pay for it. Tiffany, thank you for bringing this up. You hear him complain about lining the pockets of developers because the city is investing in affordable housing creation with for-profit developers who are building housing that wasn't going to be affordable. Let me break this down for you. He just said a minute ago, $260,000 a unit to build affordable housing at the Magnolia. That's a minimum, $260,000. Let's say $250,000. Right now, Salt Lake City, do you know how many units that we need? 6,000 modestly. 6,000 units. Do you know how much that would cost to do what he's saying, which is the city goes out and builds it all? $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. Salt Lake City's invested $56 million and gotten 4,000 units, 18 times more expensive. And that doesn't even get to the question you asked, which is, how are you going to pay for it? This city going to a ballot measure to ask, do you want to bail the state out of helping on homelessness and build housing for everyone who needs it with no help? That's what he's proposing. Do you think the city council is going to propose or approve that? 1.5 billion is modest. It could be 2.5 billion. We got 4,000 units for $56 million. If he had been investing that $56 million, we would have 200, not 4,000 units.
Valentine's turn.
So it's easy to have the numbers be high when you make them up. The vacancy numbers that's been reported for a long time from Kindergarten Institute are not.
Talk about money.
I'm getting some money. This is literally about money, Rod. So the vacancy numbers have been misreported for a long time. The Kim Gardner Institute's been claiming we need it's 2%. It's actually about 4 or 5% based on the census data in 2020 from the federal government. What Erin's been building, she's dishonest up here, just like every debate. The Pantages deal, she gave $20 million away for housing. For 40 units, they're studio apartments. We're not building affordable housing.
Money to build housing.
I will get to that. So by not giving,
that's the question. How about you address that first?
I'm tying it all together, Rod. Just stay with me. So $20 million away for a $0 deal to build studio apartments. They're $1,000 each. That's not affordable housing. Instead of giving $20 million to developers, that's $20 million that can be invested into housing, education, all sorts of things. There's been studies that have been shown all over that it's actually cheaper to just put people directly into housing to bypass the shelter model that you kind of talked about. So we're actually wasting a lot of money right now. We spent $60 million building 3 shelters that were full the first night. That's insane. And also with homeless abatement, spending millions and millions and millions of dollars of public money playing whack-a-mole, going around chasing encampments versus actually getting people into long-term stable solutions and getting people directly into housing off the streets. It will save us money. It's more humane. It's more ethical. It'll clean up the entire city.
I'm going to take a question from the audience. Can anybody say, I'm going to get the money from here? You get 15 seconds.
Yes,
15 seconds.
you're going to pull everybody together, the philanthropic community, the business community, government entities at all levels, just like we used to do when we were providing more permanent supportive housing than ever before. We were seen as the example around the country for eliminating chronic homelessness.
How much can you get?
How much can you get?
Yeah, no. Have you thought it through? Have you thought I'm going to have $100 million next year?
The city is not going to be the main funder, as usual. We're going to convene the parties. The legislature, if we had a decent plan, they would come to the table and do this. But the mayor keeps conflating.
On this. I don't have to hypothesize on this. When I was on the city council, we increased the sales tax when the state gifted us the prison, if you remember that. They said, here's your present. You get to increase your sales tax. We dedicated ongoing revenue for the first time in the city's history to affordable housing. It's building. Our sales tax, as we grow, we have the best downtown recovery in the nation. All that money people are spending is where our affordable housing. On top of that, 10% of all the tax increment our redevelopment agency collects is another stream of funding ongoing. So we don't have to make it up and imagine. We already have the money coming in.
Have someone with a mic. Where's a mic? Down there, please.
Yeah, my question is, I just want to say thank you for your honesty, by the way, Mayor Mendenhall. It's more along the lines of a different topic. So I saw the state of, I'm from California. The state of California is crumbling with the epidemic of homelessness. And coming here in 2020, I see the similarity here, but not quite as intense due to the population. But I see it going there, and I know that you are part of the solution with the Other Side Academy, and I thank you for that. But to divert this topic, I want to see more for the city, like perhaps maybe is there plans for maybe a Major League Baseball stadium or NFL stadium, anything like that? To divert, you know what I mean? I feel like the city.
Good question, and it's on a different topic. You want to go first, Mayor? Okay, first, are you going to get a Major League Baseball team if you get a chance? Do you take it?
Hell yeah, we are.
Okay.
Hell yeah. Well, if we can, we want it.
Are you going to help them build a stadium?
We are going to be a partner, and how that plays out from a financial or other perspective, those details have not been brought up yet, but we are at the table. We want to be a partner, and this is a good thing. This is a good thing for Salt Lake City.
Mr. Anderson, if you're mayor, are you going to work with a Major League Baseball team?
Going to do everything we can, but I'd like a straight answer from our mayor as to why we lost the AAA baseball team, continuing the 150-year tradition we've had of professional baseball in this city.
Will you put up some money for a Major League Baseball?
You can't, it's got to be a public-private partnership. There's no way to bring any professional team into any community without all of us coming together.
Will you work for Major League Baseball?
No, I'm ready to serve the community. I don't work for Major League Baseball. I work for the people of this city. Real quick, she talks about being a partner. Let's talk about how much of a partner, taking donations from Gail Miller while this is all being negotiated behind closed doors.
I want to hear about Major League Baseball.
This is about baseball. This whole deal came out against the public. No one knew about it. Everyone was blindsided to move in the bees outside of literally the ballpark neighborhood. And then this deal came about, $7,000, $8,000 in the last several years that she's taken from Gail Miller.
I'll ask her if she fouled up on the bees.
Absolutely not. We did not foul up on the bees. We worked for over a year with the Millers to convince them that their 1,500 acres they bought out near Daybreak in South Jordan wasn't the right place for the bees to be. But they, I think, had made a decision long before that to anchor that new development community they're building with a ballpark. And I am thrilled that instead of being activated 71 days a year, as the bees ballpark is right now and always has been, that we're going to have 365 days of activation, and that they are investing $100 million in that neighborhood's well-being, not in the development that's coming, but in the well-being of that neighborhood. It's an unprecedented investment that baseball could never have given to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Question from the audience.
So you've talked about the infrastructures you've implemented in order to help the homeless, but what about teaching the homeless to help them resolve the problem themselves?
Great question. Thank you, the Other Side Academy, for helping in some ways, from the academy to the village. Salt Lake City, despite what Mr. Anderson says, or any city in this state, is not in charge of homelessness. That continuum of care is over all of Salt Lake County. And that's a partnership that Salt Lake City participates in, but it is not, even if he came up with a great plan, he doesn't get to be the arbiter of that. So we work with a continuum of care. We work with partners like TOSA. We work with Odyssey House. We work with other service providers to make sure they have space. We support in some ways, but basically this is a partnership from all levels of government.
Take 15 seconds and tell us what's happening in mental health. 15 seconds.
Oh, big things are happening on mental health. The Huntsman Receiving Center that we've never had before is under construction in South Salt Lake. Right now, as of 2 weeks ago today, actually, up at Uni, they opened a bridge facility because we need, but this is important, Rod. We should have had a bigger question about this. Somebody in mental health crisis before 2 weeks ago would have to go to jail or the ER. Neither of those are solutions for severe mental illness or having a mental health crisis. The receiving center finally is.
All right. We were supposed to have 400 people at the least from the unsheltered community moving in the old roadway in on North Temple and Redwood Road by last April. That's what our mayor told us. We keep hearing these promises. City was going to put $2 million in, then they got another 1.8 million from the RDA.
The infrastructure, she said, we've
The-
talked about that enough. Can you talk about services?
Okay. Well, I just think that this goes to that was pulled out from underneath us. We just recently found out that deal is dead. 400 people out on the street. They need those services. And there they had planned wraparound services for 400 people, 197 units plus some concrete pads for vehicles. That would have been amazing. We were all told it was going to happen, and the deal is dead, and it's because this administration totally dropped the ball. Those people could have been getting mental health and drug treatment this entire time.
Watching this debate, I'm tempted to ask when the moderator is announcing his candidacy. But more seriously, I was homeless for 2 years, including over 2 winters, and I currently live on 30th near the Magnolia, where there's also the abandoned public safety building, outside of which during last winter there were periods where there were piles of snow that people were sleeping in, while there were not only no shelter beds available in all of Salt Lake City, but an ordinance from the mayor's office directly, not from the council, but directly from the mayor's office, prohibiting alternative organizations such as churches from opening up their doors to let homeless people stay the night. So my question is kind of a compound question. Firstly, I know Mr. Anderson, former Mayor Anderson, and Mr. Valentine have both personally visited homeless camps. Mayor Mendenhall, have you personally gone out to places like Fifth West and visited with the people in these camps who've been brutalized by the police and who've seen their friends freeze to death in the streets while they had no other options? And secondly, if I had been homeless last winter with no other options during the winter and no shelter beds available, what would you have told me if I had asked you where I could go so I wouldn't have to freeze to death?
Never mind. First of all, he works for Mr. Anderson's campaign, so that's awesome. And I just want to point out, okay, maybe it doesn't matter. Thank you for bringing up a whole slurry of questions. I don't know why you brought up the PSB, but it reminded me of a question you asked that we got distracted with your first question, didn't answer, about vacant buildings, and I think that may be where you were going. The public safety building next to the Magnolia, the old public safety building, is going out for bid. We are turning that into housing. And I'll just tell you, it's probably not going to be affordable housing because it is a historic building. And in order to keep it historic and to be able to restore it to some degree, that's going to cost money. It's probably going to be market rate housing, which is actually a better balance for that neighborhood that has permanent supportive housing right next door. So know that that's happening. There's another building that the city doesn't own, but was office space on 5th East and 1st South, where the University of Utah has a sign up. It's the old Eaton Kenway building. We are building, for the first time in the state's history, permanent supportive, perpetual housing fund. I don't like being interrupted by people in the audience. A perpetual housing fund that creates wealth building opportunities. That building is being proposed for adaptive reuse to housing that lets you build wealth even as a renter. We've never done this in the state before. And to his final question though, where would I have told him to go? It's actually not true what he said. We did an emergency declaration, and he throws around emergency declarations a lot. The state of Utah actually defines who and when, under what circumstances emergency declarations can happen. They couldn't happen right now, despite what he says, even despite what Denver has done. We did one to allow our homeless resource centers in Salt Lake City to open up beyond their limited capacity. And what kept them from being able to open more beds was a limitation in staffing, because the funding for operations of our homeless service centers is insufficient and there were not enough people, and that is tragic. We should be upset about that.
So I find it interesting that she says she doesn't like people interrupting the debate, when at the Fisher debate, her own husband stood up and interrupted the entire debate. So I think you can cut it loose on this one. You didn't even answer his question, by the way. When's the last time you went to a homeless camp and seen an actual abatement? Well, I'll give it to you in a second, but you know who is out there? City employees that have been seen hitting people with rakes, yelling at them, slashing tents, people that need to be, charged with assault and investigated and fired, people that you protect, similar to how you protect a corrupt RDA boss that just sits up there doing fraudulent things as well. So the whole point of this is, again, people have a right to exist. The emergency declaration, there's a provision literally says if people are in harm's way, an emergency declaration can be called. I'd ask the governor to be a partner on that with us to save people's lives, 160 people dying last year that you allowed to happen.
Mr. Anderson's turn.
It wasn't until at least 5 people had died on our streets out of the hundreds of people that were out there that Mayor Mendenhall made a big show of it. She signed her declaration. She's great at signing these declarations that are meaningless. And then she held a press conference saying she was doing it. All she was doing was saying, we'll allow you to do this. She hadn't even spoken with either of the 2 shelters that she was saying could increase their beds, and they never increased it by 1. That declaration was a ruse. It was so phony. And even if it hadn't been, even if they'd increased the beds by 25 per facility, there were hundreds of people left out on the street. And I think the question still remains, what would you have told people living out in the freezing cold, losing their limbs, toes, fingers to amputation?
Quick.
Salt Lake City allowed those homeless resource centers, after talking to the service providers, to expand beyond their limited capacity. And Salt Lake City does not pay service providers. We cannot, that the state of Utah puts funding toward that. Cities do not. So it is not the city's fault that the resource centers were unable to staff up immediately to allow people to safely operate in their facilities. And that is tragic. No one is disagreeing that we need more shelter beds. We need more shelter beds. But that is not the point of this today. He's trying to place blame where there actually is support.
Yes, sir.
So at the Other Side Academy, what we focus on a lot is feedback. And I just want to give a little bit of feedback before I give my question. I feel like the message is being diluted a lot by the back and forth blame. I feel like it's going towards Erin Mendenhall for what she didn't do. So I'd like a straight answer of what you plan to do in the future about your partnership with the Other Side Village if you were elected, for both the men here, and what you plan on doing with your partnership with the Other Side Village.
Good question. Thank you. You go first.
Yes, thank you. I have been down outside of Austin to Community First Village. Totally inspiring to see that model for what serves as the model for the Other Side Village. It is amazing. I'm totally supportive. I always will be. Anything that we can do to serve that population, but it is a subset. We need more permanent supportive housing. We need to get back on the track we were on when I was mayor before, and we need, if I can say this is fundamentally important, we need residential housing for mentally ill people. We have lost so much since Valley Mental Health. The contract was lost, and we don't have those residential units anymore.
Yeah, real quick, answers, please. Just 15 seconds. So I'm the only one up here who actually been homeless. I work with the homeless every day. As I mentioned, people come into my store all the time. I work with Coconut Hut. I work with Nomad Alliance. We're helping people every single day.
Village?
I absolutely will. I was very excited to come and meet with Dave and the whole team here last week. I'm excited about what's going on. I'm excited for the future of working on this and getting out. Anyone that wants to focus on people, get people off the streets, better lives, is a friend of mine.
Are you going to work with the village? Okay, Mayor Mendenhall's turn.
I love working with TOSA. I love working with the village. I want to see more tiny home communities. I'd love to have TOSA say, we're going to open a village for women, just for women. We know that there's women who, for reasons of trauma and experiences they've had, aren't going into co-ed shelters, are going to avoid winter shelters that are co-ed. I think that there are a ton of different communities and demographics and needs that a tiny home community could serve. And I hope this is just the first of many more partnerships and big ideas that we pursue together.
Well, I'm going to ask a question here, and you go first. I had a person in the audience come up and say he didn't dare, come up and ask me to ask Mayor Mendenhall if she gives a damn about neighborhoods. And what he has in mind is the Ivory development up there. In general, if you have more housing, or you're going to have less neighborhood say, or you're going to have multiple dwellings moving into residential neighborhoods, and are you going to be able to keep neighbors from stopping house building?
Nobody's trying to keep neighbors from anything. And I'll use an example. Affordable housing overlay is something that my administration's been working on. It's before the city council right now. Hang on, let me answer this, Rod. The community spoke up loud. The community in parts of our, like East Bench especially, and parts of the avenues, many people said, we don't want this greater density of 2 units or up to 4 units in our community. Other parts of the city, especially the west side, said, it's about time we start spreading affordable housing opportunities to more parts of the community. So I pulled it out of the planning commission process. We had 1,500 feedback given, and we went to work on it with the community. So this is about listening to the neighbors. We brought all sides of the argument together. We facilitated in over 3 separate meetings of discussion, and I said, see if you can come to consensus on these biggest challenges that have been highlighted. They did. It's come back to the city council, and instead of 1,500 comments, we've had about a dozen in the last city council meeting. That's what it looks like, is digging in when the conversation is hard.
So there's like some revisionist history here. That Avenues project that the person was talking about, it originally was like 36 houses. The whole community hated it. They cut it down to like 25. The whole community hated it. And they kept just trying to ram it through against the community. That's what her record is, working against the public for real estate developers and corporations. The entire city came out and supported the Pantages. She still destroyed it. Talking about the housing overlay, the affordability overlay, I was at that planning commission. There was like 4 or 5 hours of public comments. Everyone was against that because it was all cherry picked things for developers, getting rid of parking, basically putting people into these dorm units that are basically going back to tenement housing. These aren't policies for the public. They're policies to benefit corporations. She actually took donations from Ivory Homes.
I'm going to answer the specific question that was asked. That Ivory development up F Street up in the upper avenues is an obscenity. And she says, we listen to the neighbors, we listen to the community. Well, let me tell you, they took a vote, I think a couple of votes. They were like 1,000 to 1 against that development up there. It is horrible. And they're eating up open space. And again, apparently the city is accommodating Ivory to go down. They just got the Liberty Wells building and the 2 acres of open space next to it. And they're going to allow Ivory to destroy that open space. We keep losing more and more open space. When I was mayor, we were so proud to count every acre of open space that we preserved during those 8 years.
30 seconds.
I don't know about you. I'm getting whiplash again. Because here they are talking about, we need more housing. We're going to house everybody. We need housing. No, not this time. We don't want any housing. But what's most astonishing to me is that even for a former mayor, but maybe I should expect this from Mr. Valentine, they don't even understand the mayor's role in this process. The city council makes land use decisions. I was able to pull that affordable housing overlay out before it went to the city council. Once it's in the city council's hands, it's theirs. And mayors should not influence the land use decisions of a city council. He never quite learned that when he was in office, that it's not the mayor's role to lead an angry mob with his own personal opinions. It's about letting the process happen.
But it's for the mayor to lead her own planning staff, and they were behind this. They pushed it to the planning commission and then to the council. She can't dodge responsibility on everything. She's trying to dodge it on homelessness. Now she's trying to dodge it on destroying the character of our neighborhoods. And let me tell you, they keep trying to make this a west side, east side battle. The greatest letter I read on this issue was from a woman in Rose Park that said, we love our neighborhoods. Don't destroy the character of our neighborhoods by trying to shove more and more into our neighborhoods. And the way that you can provide that affordable housing is what I've been suggesting all along. And I suggest all of you take a look at our website. You
Time's
can
up.
build more intense
Time's up.
use
Okay, I'm changing the
affordable
rules.
housing.
I'm changing the rules here. We've got a bunch of people, especially people who live here, who want to ask questions. So I'm going to give you, they ask a question, short speeches before your question, not long speeches. And you guys each get 30 seconds, and we'll go through a half a dozen to try to get people. Okay, Air.
I learned patience right there. Thank you. The gloves are off to Mayor Mendenhall first. Changing it up. We're about change inside here. I want to hear you say one thing positive or that you appreciate out of Rocky Anderson as well as Mr. Valentine, and then vice versa from the other candidates. Let's see if we can try that.
Good idea. Okay. Here's pro Rocky and Valentine.
Well, I can say about each of them that I appreciate their passion for this city. I think that, when I am at my stage of the career that this gentleman is at, I'm probably not going to be running for mayor. I'm going to be enjoying this amazing city. And he coming up, experiencing what he has experienced and bringing that unique perspective is really, I think it's something to applaud. I appreciate that we all have really different opinions and we're able to say to all of you as voters, please take us seriously, and we're all passionate.
Mr. Anderson's turn.
I've been up against a lot of candidates in my career. I beat them all, by the way, well, except congressional race. But in Salt Lake City, we did really well. And I think Mayor Mendenhall is incredibly articulate and smooth, very polished. And I have to congratulate her on that. I think she's done a lot of study about how to present, and she does it very articulately.
Mr. Valentine's turn.
Rocky, you forgot to say something nice about me.
Michael, sorry. I got the toughest one over with, sorry. So I've gotten to know Michael good, bad, and different, but I'll tell you the great side of him, he is passionate and he cares. He has such heart for other people who are in need.
30 seconds, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, I really respect Rocky's long time service in civil rights as an attorney. I think that's really remarkable, helping people, taking cases that no one else would take. I really respect Erin's idea for the water audit. I actually think that's a genius idea. Me and Erin have an interesting situation where years ago I tried to buy the Pantages. I was working with Eccles. I made offers repeatedly. I tried to take the deal to her on a silver platter. I never wanted to run for mayor. That was never in the cards for me. There's some alternate reality where I'd be the director of a theater. I wish she would have worked with me back then. I was trying to work with her. It took me 2 years to meet with her, but I respect her running.
Mr. James Brown, I think, is going to ask a question.
Thanks. I'm a little confused. I came in a little late, but there's no one solution for the homeless issue. You talk about building houses, affordable housing. That's not just the answer that's going to resolve the homeless situation. And I think part of this process we have to face is that each of you, if you win, will have to know how to govern, and that is to create policies that's going to make a difference, and it's going to take a collective body of people to make that difference. Are you in a position? Do you have the knowledge and the accessibility to the other people who can make the kinds of decisions that will collaborate and support what you want to do to make a difference for the homelessness and other issues that this city faces? So we can dispute everybody's credibility, but that's not going to solve the problem. The
Mr.
problem
Valentine,
lies
I'll let him answer. Thank you.
in the people making the right decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a working class person. I'm an independent, which means I'm not part of any political party. I reach across every aisle. I'm proud to have probably the most diverse support up here from anyone politically. And then also I work with the homeless every day, Nomad Alliance, Coconut Hut. So really what I'm doing is taking the grassroots solutions, the solutions homeless people already have, and taking that into the city and building coalitions to solve this problem once and for all. And real fast too, I like what you said about there isn't one solution. That's the point of intaking people. Everyone who's been homeless has a different story, has a different situation, and we need to have individual care for each one of those people.
Mr. Anderson.
When I was mayor for 8 years, we held every month a Saturday morning with the mayor, which included all the heads of our departments. So everybody could come, they could voice their complaints, their concerns, sometimes their appreciation, and we would find out about issues and go out and solve them. It was an amazing process. We also had a monthly news and community conference, the same kind of thing, getting out into the community. I think expanding the membership of our boards and commissions. Oh, my time's up already. We need to fill the boards of the seats on all these boards and commissions to let people in our community become more engaged.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. Homelessness is as complex as every individual who experiences it. And as we've talked about tonight, cities alone cannot solve for what is at least a statewide crisis. It's really a national crisis that's been decades in the making. The state, the county, the city have never worked this well together before. And the results are showing up in the form of more beds than ever before, funding from the state to Salt Lake City that we never had before, and plans for even the severely mentally ill that the system has never appropriately touched, that everyone is on the same page. The entire city council endorses me. Our police, our firefighters, our city workers endorse me because they know I can get results and work together.
We're out of time. And I thought this was going to go, we're going to run out of things to say, but we're out of time. Sorry. You come up and ask afterwards. They'll talk to you, I think. We're going to have a closing statement. We drew for opening statements. So in closing statement, I think I'm right. Mr. Valentine, you go first. The mayor you go second, and the mayor goes third. 1 minute.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This has been a great discussion, kind of fiery at times. So hopefully you guys followed the whole conversation. I think a lot of things in our city aren't working right now, and I think that stems to the very foundation of having a mayor and a city council is actually there to serve the public, serve the people, work for the community, not for special interests, not for corporations, not for developers. And that's what we've seen for the last 4 years. I'm running for public service. I'm not a politician. This is the first election I've ever ran in. I'm running to serve the community. I'm running to, like I said, eradicate homelessness, bring new ideas, new solutions to the table, find these win-win-wins that are missing right now. You know, like I said, I have been a homeless person, but also been a business owner. So I have a foot in a lot of these situations where I can see both sides of the equation and can find solutions that no one else can see. You know, I think it's very important that we're kind of at a crossroads right now. I'm worried about situations getting worse for our homeless community and pushing us in a new trajectory. And feel free to talk to me after. Thank you so much.
Nobody can solve the problems we're facing alone, but it takes leadership. It takes principled leadership, and it takes inspirational leadership. And it takes the kind of leadership where we convene the parties and put a plan together and see that it's implemented. Does anybody know what the goal is for the next 3 years under the state's plan that this mayor signed off on for the elimination of the reduction of our unsheltered population in the state? Anybody know? 5%. 5% over 3 years. You can't achieve very much if that's your goal. Their goal for 5 years for eliminating the vulnerable homeless population, that is the disabled, the elderly, chronically homeless, victims of domestic abuse, their goal is a 7% reduction. I would have provided I would have been there saying, there is no way I'm signing off on that document unless we step it up like we were stepping it up when I was mayor before, and we were seen around the country as an example for how to eliminate chronic homelessness.
Mayor Mendenhall.
If that had happened, if he'd succeeded, we wouldn't have spent the last hour and a half talking about homelessness and the challenges that we're facing. We've been through 8 years of a mayor fighting with the state of Utah, and we're still suffering the consequences. We've been through a lot in the last 3.5 years. We haven't even talked about what has happened, COVID, a hurricane, inland hurricane, earthquakes, 300 protests on the streets of Salt Lake City in a 7-month period. We've been through a lot. Our city is not perfect, but it is pretty great. We've got the best downtown recovery in the nation. We've built more affordable housing than in the city's history. We've invested more than ever before. We have partners in the state, we have partners in the county, and we're all on the same page finally about what we're going to do, and we're doing it. This is leadership, not taking the headlines and making the jabs. It's getting things done. It's getting the partnerships to stay together. You can go home and cry when you get your feelings hurt. You don't get to walk away, because your job as mayor is to get the best results you can for your blue dot city in this super red state. And we're doing great, Salt Lake City. We're not perfect, but we're doing great.
Thank you. I've seen a lot of politicians, and these three are pretty good. We've got a good field to choose from. Let's give them a.
On behalf of the Other Side Academy, I want to thank everybody for being here. Michael, thank you for your participation. Rocky, thank you for your participation. Mayor Mendenhall, thank you for being here. One of the biggest reasons why we want to do this is because we've got about 130 students living here at the Other Side Academy, many of which, or all of which, have had some drug issues in their past and criminal behavior in their past and justice involved. And it is important for them to have a voice in our community going forward, because when they graduate from here and reintegrate back into our community, they are going to be contributing members in our community. And it is important that they get to know the candidates so that you can make educated decisions on who you would like to lead our great city. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the students at the Other Side Academy, all of our guests, everybody who supports the Other Side Academy. We couldn't have done this. We would not be here today if not for you. Thank you.